What do you think about disclosure? What do you think that's going to be? I mean, how are people that's been lying to us for the last 70 to 80 years ever going to suddenly be believed as telling us the truth?
Never, never, never will there be any disclosure. There won't be anything close to disclosure. And this moron, Senator Harry Reid, senator from Nevada, has just retired as a senator. And he has cooked up this scam that he cooked up with Bob Bigelow. And they went to the Pentagon and they said, look, we'd like to investigate UFOs and we'll take the heat off you so that you don't have to say anything that you know, but if you'll give us $22 million, we'll be the UFO researchers. And Harry Reid said, I'll be Mr. Disclosure. Well, the thing is, Harry Reid, all he wants is a free lunch. And the reason he needs a free lunch is because he's gotten a free lunch for his last 30 years as his position as a senator from the state of Nevada. And he's used to that free lunch. But now he's retired, he doesn't get a free lunch. So he cooked up this deal where they got the $22 million from the Pentagon. He gave it to his friend Bob Bigelow. Bob Bigelow has been involved in UFOs since he was a little kid. And as a matter of fact, after Bob Lazar quit working up at S4, he and Bob Lazar went into a business called Zeta Reticuli 2. It was Nevada Corporation, and I recently posted the corporate papers and the application for EIN certificate. But it only lasted a very short time, and the reason was because Bob Bigelow envisioned putting money into a little laboratory. It was a little laboratory space over near McCarran Field, and he was going to fill it full of the stuff that Bob needed: computers, all kinds of scientific equipment and measuring equipment, and all kinds of stuff. And his idea was that he would set Bob Lazar up. Bob Lazar would be working there 8 hours a day, and Bigelow could take his friends over and show them the little scientist that worked for him and all the cool stuff he was making. Whereas what Bob Lazar thought about this idea was that as soon as the equipment was being unloaded into this little laboratory, he would take it over to his house and do what he wanted with the equipment. And that didn't set well with Bob Bigelow. So they came to a parting of the ways, and nothing was ever heard of that again. And then, so the next time Bob Bigelow surfaces is when he bought the ranch in Utah with all this crazy paranormal stuff going on, and then recently hooking up with Harry Reid to be Mr. and Mrs. Disclosure, and they were going to uncover the information on UFOs. But it's all just a scam. It's to take the heat off the Pentagon, because the Pentagon has been collecting UFO information for the past 70 years. They have at least 60 different UFOs. They have at least 100 bodies of at least 8 different types of extraterrestrials. They deal daily with real flesh and blood extraterrestrials, and they don't want the public to know anything about that.
Well, we've got Duncan, the grid keeper, on the phone. Duncan, can you hear John Lear?
Hello, John.
Hello, Duncan.
Great. Well, tell us all about your visit to John Lear and what happened.
I agree with John about disclosure. I think it's just... I'm not going to swear. To remind myself not to swear because we're live. I think it's just a joke, disclosure. I really do. I don't think they're ever going to want to tell us anything. Just how I feel about it. I've had enough of hearing about disclosure.
Now, Bruce Swartz is the one that has figured out a way to penetrate the holograph that covers the moon. And when we look up at the moon, we see a gray, and we see what look like to be craters. All you're looking at is a holograph. That's not what's there. But Bruce was able to figure out how to penetrate that holograph, and it's just amazing. All of the buildings and cities and areas and roads and passageways and tunnels and bridges and everything else that's up there. And to tell you how significant it is, I had these, I copied some of these, and I'm getting them ready to post on this one on the back of the photo that I originally had on the moon. And I had them laid out on the table, and Marilee comes in, and my wife, and she doesn't usually believe any of this stuff, and she says, "What's that? What are those buildings?" I said, "Well, that's the moon, but that's taken with a telescope that can penetrate the holograph." And she went nuts. She said, "Unbelievable." And usually she doesn't believe anything, but she looked at that, and now everybody that comes to the house, she takes them in and says, look at these pictures of what John has. And I said, well, those are the ones that came off Bruce Schwartz's video, and they are fantastic. Now, these are the ones that were taken with a 12-inch telescope, and now he's working with a 14-inch telescope.
Is there something that people could see somewhere where that is?
I have a little trouble walking, but I'll get a couple of those things in.
Okay, let's see that now.
8 o'clock position. These are kind of crinkled here, but this was...
You can't see this, Duncan, but we're looking at a picture of the moon.
I can see it.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Right.
Got you on the computer muted.
It'll be a couple of seconds later. Okay.
That's down result, and that was taken with the lunar orbiter pictures, and that's obviously a huge city. You can't see how clear it is now, but if you were to here, you can actually see one of the McDonald's franchises up there on one of the corners of Damo's house.
McDonald's.
Now, here is here's some of the photos.
I think there's some people felt that the McDonald's thing was a joke. Yeah, continue.
That's right. That was taken from Bruce Schwartz's video, and that's up by Sinus Iridum at the northern part of the moon, where he's found so many of these huge areas of stuff that's going on. There's another area here. Huge buildings and bridges and roadways and stuff that's going on. Obviously, NASA tells us there's no atmosphere. Obviously, there is an atmosphere. It's about the gravity is 70% that of Earth, not 1/6 as they say. And none of these buildings are dome-shaped, which means it has normal atmosphere. So,
I mean, that looks just like an area, like a normal city in the States or anywhere normal.
Yeah, these are just fantastic photos. And then just go to Bruce Says All. It's BruceSaysall, Bruce Says All, on YouTube, or he has a website. And he has just some fantastic pictures there.
Now, it's important that some of the developments at Portendown here in the UK were there for the use of creating beings for use on Britain's lunar base. What do you say about that, John?
Britain's lunar base?
Well, they were providing personnel, some kind of developed personnel for use on the lunar base. I'm not saying, I shouldn't have said it was Britain's lunar base, but they were developing a special kind of being for use on the base?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether they've got the permission of the people up there. There's 3 billion people that live on the moon. They're humans just like us, but they're far, far more advanced. In our solar system, NASA tells us we have 9 planets. Actually, there's 40 planets. And all of those planets have one or more civilizations, and all of those planets have one or more moons, and all of those moons have one or more civilizations. And there's so much going on in our solar system, it's absolutely unbelievable. Our minds can simply not comprehend how much is going on out there. And we're just here, we're on planet Earth, we're just the backward civilization, and actually they take trips from the other planets to look at the zoo, the Earth Zoo, the people that are still fighting one another, and they fly around and watch our wars and stuff like that. We have no idea what's going on, and the reason we're here on Earth is because over our past lifetimes, and all of us have lived hundreds of lifetimes. Miles, you've lived hundreds. I've lived hundreds. Duncan has lived hundreds. And in our last lifetime, apparently we made a mistake, and we're here on Earth to rectify that mistake. And the way that we rectify it is to learn how to live with integrity, without envy, without hate, without greed, and to express our love to our families each and every day. And that's all we have to do here. We're not here to change the world. We're not here to change our friends. We're not here to improve the bad guy. We're here just to change ourselves. So, and until we can do that, we're not going to be allowed into outer space. And that's why the ETs put the Van Allen belt out there, so that we can't go anywhere without their express permission. And going to the moon, of course, was out of the question. First of all, there's no room for us there. Second of all, all the stuff that the pictures they had of the moon are fake, and the reason is because the daytime sky is a saffron yellow. It's not black. And the gravity is 70% that of Earth's gravity, so all their hippity-hopping around at half speed was sheer baloney, and it was just to make the public think that we had that kind of technology. But more important, it was to take the $40 billion that was allegedly spent on the space program and put it into a program that they wanted.
Well, what about the spacecraft that John Wilson saw? I remember when I visited you, you were talking about John Wilson's huge craft that he was seeing, and I know John was there with Duncan. What about those huge spacecrafts in orbit, those secret spaceships or whatever they are? Whose ships are they?
Yeah, they're it all started at the end of World War II. The United States was trying to develop the atomic bomb at Los Alamos, and Germany was trying to develop their atomic bomb. And the United States could make the initiator, they could make everything in the bomb, except they could not make the plutonium that was needed. Now, whereas Germany, they couldn't make the initiator or anything else, but they could make the plutonium. So 3 months before the end of World War II, when Germany knew that it was all over, they were going to lose, they came to the United States and they said, look, we'll give you the plutonium you need to finish your bomb and bomb Japan. All we ask is that at the end of the war, you let in 4,000 of our Nazi scientists and give them citizenship, no questions asked, full citizenship and privileges, which we agreed to do. And so that was Operation Paperclip. It was organized by John Foster Dulles, who was Secretary of State, Allen Dulles, his brother, who was head of the CIA, and Eleanor Dulles, their sister, who was head of the United States Berlin desk in Berlin. And between the three of them, they're the ones that let at least 4,000 Nazi scientists in. And of course, the Nazis got into the United States and started taking over everything. The first thing they did is they took over NACA, NACA, made it NASA, National Air and Space Administration, and Nazis have always been at the top of that heap. And they took over Bell Helicopter, instigated the Gulf of Tonkin scam and the Vietnamese War just to sell helicopters. And then they had the space scam to raise $40 billion that they spent on stuff that they wanted. And the stuff that they wanted were the direct energy weapons. I think we have 15 of them that are orbiting, and they're used to control and control people the way they want. For instance, the collapse of Building 1 and 2 was with direct energy weapons. It had nothing to do with airplanes.
Yeah, but what about the fires? The fires in California? Direct energy weapons there?
They were started with direct energy weapons, and those are for the, what did they call that, Agenda 21 or whatever?
Agenda 21, yeah.
Yeah. And so they've got their own agenda going, and they're in complete control. And Hitler did not commit suicide. Of course, he left after World War II. He lived in Antarctica for a while, then went up to Argentina and lived there for a while. The whole time was running what was going on in the U.S., and he eventually died in the United States in a hospital there in 1968, still, pretty much in charge of all the stuff that was going on. And Israel is so adamant in getting the U.S. to do different stuff. For instance, Project Yinon, YINON, started in 1979 specifically to make the United States believe that Muslims were a threat. And that's why they said Muslims were flying those airplanes that destroyed the buildings. And pure bullshit. Had nothing to do with that. What Israel was trying to do was to get us, the United States, and the people in the United States go into the Middle East and attack their enemies, the Israel's enemies, the 9 Muslim states that they consider enemies.
And then Russia, and then attack Russia. Is that not the next thing to attack Russia?
No, I don't think. Well, I don't think so, because the United States and Russia have been allies ever since the end of World War II, and also before the end of World War II. We've always been friends. All this stuff about the Cold War was pure bullshit. There was never any Cold War. There was never any threat about Russia launching nuclear missiles or us protecting. All the stuff about Strategic Air Command, all pure bullshit to make the public interested or scared about something that was going on so that they didn't think about UFOs. That's all the Cold War was about. So there's never been any threat from Russia, never going to be any threat from Russia.
Now, I want to do a little advertisement. These are diamond matches, strike on the box. I've been using them for like 60 years. I used to light campfires with them and everything, and they are have positively the worst quality control on the planet Earth. There's supposed to be 250 matches in there, and probably 80 of them work.
80? That's more than one.
And the rest of them, they have, instead of a regular tip like other matches, they have an incendiary match that when you strike it, it goes off in 360 degrees all over. There are holes in my shirt. You see that hole? Those are what they do. They send holes, and they go flaming all over. They go over to a guest, go over on me, light everything on fire. I mean, I'm telling you, this is the worst quality control on the planet Earth. And these are respected blue diamond matches. Okay, that's all I got to say about that.
Have you thought maybe of buying a different brand of matches?
There isn't one.
There isn't one.
No.
Are you going to tell me the United States is run by the Soviet Union and you've only got one state-sponsored matchbox company?
Yeah, a direct energy weapon, of which the secret government, the U.S. Naval Command, based out of Kwajalein Island, they have 13 of them at least. John Walson, my good friend John Walson, has taken fantastic pictures of these things orbiting. I have a bunch of pictures in my hallway. And in addition to that, they have some steel foundries up there. And I say steel. They make D.D, and D.D is the hull material they use for submarines, aircraft carriers, battleships. And, you know, it's much, much lighter than steel and titanium, much, much stronger than steel and titanium. And not only that, this hull material with a small electrical charge, they can keep the ocean between 5 and 7 centimeters away from the hull, so that we know that normally a hull type of a boat, the limiting speed is 1.34 times the square root of the waterline, which means that most hull-based craft can only go 45 to 50 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour at maximum. But if there's no drag, if there's no water along the side of the hull, it can go up to 100, 125 knots. And you can imagine an aircraft carrier that they launched a few months ago, the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier. It's a mammoth. If you can imagine that doing 125 knots, I mean, it's fantastic. And they say, well, you know, wouldn't the crew be able to notice it? No, they're all commanded to stay below. They cannot be up there on deck when it's going that speed.
Apart from the fact they'd get washed off or blown off, no? I mean,
But what?
wouldn't they get blown off the deck at that speed?
Absolutely. But they don't want them up there to know how fast it goes. And then the crew member says, hey, how come we got to someplace 2 days faster than we normally do? They're not allowed to ask those questions. And if you're in the Navy, you know better than to ask those questions. So they've kept it secret, and those things have some fantastic speed. Anyway, that material is made in orbiting foundries, and it's brought down. It's called D.D, and it's brought down by airplanes that are 10 times bigger than a 747. And I think you were the one that was one of the first to ever notice it, see it.
Yeah, I mean, that was... And it landed at Macrahanish, which is going to be a spaceport.
Yeah, and I have the picture you drew on the wall there. So that's the craft. They bring it down, and I sent you pictures of Macrahanish, and there's certainly enough room there for a secret runway.
Well, there are people, locals, who've seen the TR-3B fly in there. All sorts of stuff going in and out of there at ground level. But how they land it and where they land it on, I mean, that seems to be something different.
Exactly.
But Tompkins, what about Bill Tompkins? He's saying that those foundries must be being made in huge craft. Is that bit of a story true?
He's not saying anything. Bill Tompkins is dead.
In the past, when he was speaking. God. Got to be careful with your shrewd wit and genius and modest genius.
Where'd you put my pipe?
I think you put it somewhere flammable so it would soon go up in flames.
Okay, so what do you want to know about Bill Tompkins?
Well, Bill Tompkins, I agree with what you've said, that Bill was bumped off. He was allowed to basically tell a story, support NASA's landing on the moon thing, aliens on the moon, therefore there must be things on the moon. But it's a mixture of stories, isn't it?
It's a what?
It's a mixture of stories.
Yeah, it's a mixture of stories.
So let's get the stories right on this one now.
Here's the story. We didn't go to the moon, period. No possible way. I'll give you 25 good, ironclad reasons why we didn't go. But
let's start with one and let's work through them.
Okay, the first of all, I have to tell you about Randy Walsh's new book. And just a second, let me put my pipe here because I think.
And we also want to talk about Dulce because you found this mysterious file on your computer. You got the book. That's fantastic.
Now it's full,
and that's available in the current Nexus, folks. If you want to go to Nexus magazine, there's a review of that.
He takes apart every single excuse that NASA supposes that they went. And the most interesting one is the Saturn V. They never flew a Saturn V. What they used for the public to see was a Saturn I. And the way we could prove it is that it was, I think, 15 seconds behind at 26,000 feet and 73 seconds behind at 80,000 feet. And the reason they know that is a guy got a film from beginning until it lost. You can see it in the sky.
Now we're talking about the Apollo 11 launch, and a cloud layer that the Saturn V was seen to go through.
Right,
it went through late.
It went through late, yeah. So,
what about the 300-foot thing?
The what?
I mean, the Saturn V's 300 foot. Whereas the Saturn 1B is half that size.
Is halfway?
It's half the size. It's not as long.
Oh, they made it bigger. Yeah, they camouflaged it.
So are you saying the big nozzles were just Saturn 1B engines with a big nozzle?
I don't know whether it was Saturn 1B engines. Randy discusses that in detail, and
I mean, a lot of this is down to cavitation of those big engines. They didn't work. The Apollo 4, Apollo 6, if they'd had a crew on board either of those, they would have been shaken to death, that sort of thing. Is that?
It would be to go through the Van Allen belt. He spends a whole chapter on the Van Allen belt and has some really neat drawings. And
but didn't NASA launch the new version, which they launched, I think, 18 months ago? And they had all the data from the Apollo, knowing what all the radiation was, because they obviously went through and they had all that radiation data out in space and were therefore able to use that data for their future missions, which are going to go back there in 2021. But obviously NASA went to the moon and they can rely on all the Apollo figures, which is why they didn't have to launch that test vehicle in the first place to find out what the radiation actually is.
Nobody's going anywhere. We're not going in 2021. There's too much radiation out there, and we don't have a way to solve it. ET does, and we can go with ET, but only with them. We can't do it ourselves.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but there's a guy who owns a warehouse, and he sells lots of AMs and ZONs, and he's very rich. He's half as rich as he was, and he just said he's got a big space rocket and he's going to launch this thing and he's going to land on the moon and he's going to charge people for it.
Oh, who says that?
The head of some guy called Amazon, Amazon Zon.
You're not talking about Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. He just announced his big rocket and how wonderful it is.
Jeff Bezos is not a moron. Jeff Bezos is just galactically uninformed. He doesn't know, and there's nobody to tell him that there's radiation out there and he ain't going anywhere. Now, you know, the funny thing about Jeff Bezos, he says he's going to populate the solar system. He's going to take some Earth bozos out there and spread them around the solar system. What Bezos doesn't know is there's 39 planets other than Earth in our solar system. And they have trillions and trillions and trillions of ETs and humans and everything out there. And they don't need Jeff Bezos to bring a couple of Earth bozos out there and mess things up. We're down here on Earth to learn one thing, and that's to live our lives with integrity.
Yeah. I've got your T-shirt on here, John.
Creed, yeah. And to express our love to our families each day. So Jeff needs to get informed somehow because he's going to be losing a lot of money.
Well, what about Elon Musk? I mean, he's a pretty smart kid. Surely he knows.
No, none of those guys know anything. They believe in NASA, and NASA's not going to tell them anything. For instance, we pulled a good one on Israel the other day. They were going to go to the moon and put a lander on the moon, but NASA forgot to tell them that the gravity there is 69.71% of Earth. And Israel built a lander on the basis that it was 1/6 the gravity of Earth, and it crashed. They ran out of gas because they're trying to land it, with a gravity almost 2/3 of that of Earth, and they ran out of gas because they're just using too much fuel trying to stay in the air. So they went splat. And
well, a friend of mine called Ken Johnston, who was a astronaut for the Grumman spacecraft, and he trained the Apollo astronauts on how to land the LEM. He has photographs. I think he's going to show these in Manchester in celebration of the 50th anniversary of Apollo. And he says there's an atmosphere in the moon too.
They went.
Ken Johnston, astronaut, infers that there is a...
I think he was a test astronaut.
Yeah, he was a test astronaut for Grumman. And he's got the same name as me, so he must be telling the truth.
So what does he say about...
Well, he says they did land on the moon, and Apollo did that 50 years ago, and everything's fine.
Do you mind if I answer my phone?
Yes, I do mind, actually, but you'll do it anyway. Okay, John, right. The Saturn V dressed up as a Saturn 1B, I don't get it.
Yeah, dressed up as it had to look right, and they did a good job. And it was a good fake. Now, have you seen that WikiLeaks movie going around?
You're talking about the Apollo 11 film?
The stuff shot out at Area 51. Did you see that one?
No.
Oh, come on. On my Facebook page?
My God, I'll have to go there. No, I have missed that. So I've been so busy, I haven't... when did you put it up?
A couple days ago. Somebody had a camera out on Area 51 and showed how they filmed the land, how they filmed walking on the moon. And it's absolutely hilarious, Miles, because all the things that we know that they did, they do it in real time. They say, ready, action. And then they start walking at Area 51, a movie camera.
Yeah. But that's obviously before it was all closed off.
It went?
I mean, it was only closed off in the 80s, wasn't it?
What, Area 51?
Yeah.
1955.
But you were able to drive there and say hi and drive out once, you mentioned.
I went out 4 times. Well, I went out more than that. I was caught 4 times. And the 4th time they said, look, this is the last time. Don't come back. And I haven't been back.
Because you're a good boy. And then the next time was with Bob Lazar, but we know all that. Okay, the foundries that you're talking about up in space, are they the things which were like made way back in the 40s and the 50s and anti-G'd up these big submarine pressure vessels that were made in the United States and then somehow anti-gravitied and welded up on the lunar surface? I mean, what how much of this story's real or bunk or whatever? Is it all bunk? How do they get those heavy platforms that John Walston's talking about and you're talking about up into space?
Well, how did they get the part? They make them up there. They don't make them down here.
Yeah, but how do they, I mean, we've got the space shuttle, which doesn't fly anymore. The United States has got no manned lifting ability at all, we're told. The only people going to do that is Elon Musk, Boeing, and Mr. Amazon. So where's all this stuff coming from?
I see where you're at, Miles. Okay, when the U.S. Naval Space Command started in the late 60s, and it was financed through the fake Gemini, Mercury, and Apollo programs. They ripped about $40 billion off, and that gave them the money to start the Naval Space Command. And it was based at Kwajalein Island in the South Pacific. And you could go to your map and go down to the Marshall Islands and then see Kwajalein, and that's where they based. And today they launch 3 or 4 rockets every month. They have between 1,000 and 1,500 astronauts, current and qualified. Most of them are in orbit at all times, and it's a huge operation. So when President Trump a few months ago said he was starting a space command, everybody wondered, what do you mean starting a space command? We already got one. And we're wondering if he's trying to dovetail his space command into the real space command. And we don't know whether he knows about the real, Naval Space Command, or whether, he's been told, well, let's, start one, and then we'll see what we can do if we can get one going. But this U.S. Naval Space Command, and all that information is on livingmoon.com. Ron Schmidt has been working on this for at least 15 years, and he's done a miraculous job. And, 500 million people live on the moon, humans just like us, but far more advanced, both sociologically and technologically. And there's an atmosphere on the moon, just like I said 20 years ago. And the gravity is 69 point. Okay, so
so right, the thing we're trying to get at is how much of these huge craft that have been seen by John Walston and you're talking about, where the hell did all these things get built, and how did they get up there?
We're pretty sure that they were built at the White Sands Missile Test Range. We think there's a couple of covert. Well, we know there's a couple of covert runways there. They have the space shuttle runway there, but there's other strips that are, we have that way to hide runways with holograms. It works perfect. I mean, you can't see anything. Now,
Tompkins, I mean, I'm getting back to this. Where are these structures built?
Okay. Now,
the British are talking about the base on the moon and making creatures for them and things.
Okay. Who said there's a base on the moon?
My sources in England said they were making these creatures, and that's where in vitro fertilization was created for. So they would make these things, which look like greys, and they'd end up working on the lunar base, unquote. So we've got a lunar base up there. And Ken Johnston gave me a PowerPoint presentation with a whole lot of pictures in it, all black and white, about the Apollo era and all the rest of it. But he showed a picture which had a Jew-shaped shape, and it was something like a weather balloon that they were actually launching from the surface. So he was saying, or going to say, before the interview was pulled, and I couldn't use any of his photographs, that they have an atmosphere in the moon and they were launching a weather balloon.
Okay. I don't know anything about that. All I know and all I've said was the Apollo missions didn't go. Now, if they found a way since then, it had to be with the help of ET, because we did not have the ability to guard astronauts against the radiation. It just can't be done. It has to be with ET help. So if we have a base on the moon, and I don't think we do, that one factor had to be solved, the Van Allen protection from the Van Allen belt. But all I'm saying is the Apollo mission didn't go. Now, maybe there's other missions. Where did they launch them from?
Okay. You've found some photographs on your computer.
Yeah, Dolce has been around for a long time.
You've sent those photographs, and what's the significance of them? This is making aliens in the Dulce base.
Making aliens?
Well, making aliens, whatever these things were on those photographs.
Well, there's aliens. It's an alien base. We work with them. They've allowed us to come in and work with them. and they make all kinds of strange stuff. You have different types of aliens that work there. There's aliens that look like us, but they're a little bit taller. There's aliens that look like the praying mantis. There's grays. There's all kinds of aliens that walk up and down the hallways there and do what they do best. And level 7, as you know, is Nightmare Hall, and that's where they attempt to cross humans with animals. And they've got all kinds of things going on there. The base exists. It's been there for a long time. It's still going. I have several confirmations that it's there. When Bob Lazar worked at S4, he heard him mention it several times. The word Dulce, and they're going, or they're coming, or we've been there, or something like that. Now, talk about the Dulce War. There was no Dulce War. Now, Bill Schneider, a nice a guy as he was never at Dulce, and he was never in any Dulce War. If he was killed, and I don't know for a fact that he was, I don't know who did it. Now, I have a letter from one of his friends that he absolutely committed suicide. So maybe he committed suicide and he tied himself up and whatever. I don't know what the story is, except I do know that Bill Schneider did not work at Dulce. He never was at Dulce, and he wasn't in a Dulce War. Now, the way the story of the war got going was that when I first met Cherry Hinkle, she was working with a guard there that had escaped, and he disagreed with what was going on there, the fantastic, unbelievable experiments with animals and humans and all that, and he escaped out of there with 7 minutes of videotape of a hallway, 25 black and white photos, and 100 pages of technical information. He went, and his name was, do you remember his name right off? I had it right down here the other day. Whoever.
Val Valerian? No.
No. The guy that Cherry Hinkle, the guy that.
Well, we've got some of the photographs. We've got some of the documents here. I could have a look at that, but I'll leave that for the edit.
Okay,
I'll have a look at them.
Name of the guard. That's okay. I'll remember it in a second. But anyway, he got in contact with his friend Cherry Hinkle, who lived in Henderson, and she wrote to Tom Adams. And in 1987, I met with Tom and Linda Howe and Chris Lambright and a bunch of them up at Crestone, Colorado, and we had kind of a meeting of the UFO enthusiasts to trade information. And Tom handed me the letter from Cherry Hinkle that told all about Dulce, but not the name, and wanted to talk to him about it. And Tom said, John, I don't have time to do this. Would you do it for me? And I said, sure. So when I got back to Vegas, I contacted Cherry and, spent 2 or 3 years with her learning about all this stuff. And one of the things she told me was the fact that he had made 4 or 5 separate containers, boxes, suitcases, whatever they were, waterproof and dustproof and everything. And in each of one of these was copies of the 7-minute videotape, the 25 black and white photos, and the 100 pages of technical information. And he gave one of those 5 containers to each of his friends and said, please keep this. If you don't hear from me on 2 contacts, and he would make a contact every 4 months. If you missed 8 months in a row, that meant that they had captured him, and they were allowed to do whatever they want with the contents. They could show it to the public or hide it or whatever. Now, Cherry got one of those containers, and she hid it in Dolan Springs. Now, Dolan Springs is halfway between here and Kingman, and Cherry and I drove down to Dolan Springs, turned left off the highway, and she pointed up in the mountains exactly where she had buried that container. And I kept that to myself for many years. And a few years ago when or I think 1996, when he missed 8 months in a row, and they made an attempt to find the box. And I think they made 3 or 4 attempts, and I think Bill Hamilton was on at least one of the attempts, maybe more, but they never did find the box. But anyway, when after the first couple of weeks that I met Cherry, she had made a pencil drawing of 5 pencil drawings of those black and white photos, and those were the photos that you have copies of. And she asked me if I would distribute them to my friends, and I said yes, but they're in faint pencil, so I'm going to have to make felt tip drawings of them. So I spent a week or two making very careful copies in a felt tip pen of these drawings. And I think there's 4 or 5 of them. And I took those drawings, made copies, and 1 page of technical information. And I think that's all. And I sent it to my friends and told them what the story was. And those became known as the Dulce papers. And I never signed any of the drawings. The only way I can prove that that packet was mine was the typeface, the typewriter that typed the technical information was off of an IBM executive proportional typewriter, the first of which came out in 1965, and I bought one of the first ones, and I still have it. And because of the typeface and the way that it puts type on that paper proves that it had to be mine, because I'm the only one left with one of those typewriters. So that's how I proved it was. Unfortunately, I never signed any of the drawing, but I have her original pencil drawings and my original felt tip drawings. But anyway, that's the way the story, that's the way that the Dulce papers got into the public, as I sent them.
And that was published in Matrix 1 by Val Valerian, is that right?
Matrix 1 came off, every page came off this desk right here. You see this desk? Every single piece of paper that's in Matrix 1 came off this desk right here. I had a wonderful time with Linda. She said she wanted to go down. I said, what are you doing after Crestone? She said, I'm going down to Albuquerque to meet with Colonel Ernie Edwards and Bob Collins. And I said, okay, well, I'll drive you there if you want. She said, fine. So when the conference was ended, Linda Howe and I start driving down to Albuquerque, and we get by Alamosa. And just before we get to Espanola, this was in 1988, 3 F-117As are flying. There's 2 on this side and 1 on this side. And of course, I was familiar with it, but they had just released that to the public. And here they are shadowing me and Linda driving down this road to Albuquerque. I mean, it was so improbable, because I knew that they were based at Tonopah, and what they would be doing on this road following me and Linda was, I mean, just incredible. So Linda and I get to Albuquerque, and we have dinner with Colonel Ernie Edwards. Now, Colonel Ernie Edwards was the guy that the Air Force assigned to Paul Benowitz to keep track of him and, help him or not help him or whatever. And we had dinner with him, and he had some very nice things to say about Paul. No bad mouthing at all. No, he's a nut. He thought he was on the up and up. The only thing that we could not understand is Paul had some black and white photos of the Arch La Mesa, where the secret nuclear craft crashed. The one that you've heard of, the Cash Landum case.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that craft, we're pretty sure it was that craft, crashed on the Arch La Mesa. And Paul Benowitz went up there several times to find parts. And the only part that he found in all of his expeditions was one U.S. government ballpoint pen, and that was it. There was nothing else. But anyway, that craft crashed there, and Paul had aerial photos. He had a little airplane he used to fly around and take photos of. He had photos of the Arch La Mesa. And when he'd show it, like when he showed them to me, he'd say, look, that's one of those spacecraft there. And I couldn't see anything. And I'd say, well, now exactly where it is, right there. See this down there? I couldn't see anything. So when I had dinner with Ernie Edwards, I said, did he show you those photos? He said, yeah. I said, did you see anything? He said, no. I said, isn't it interesting? Paul sees something there and we don't. And he says, I can't explain that. Albuquerque is a very famous place, particularly in my life, because when I crashed at Bucher Youngman over in Geneva, Switzerland on June 24th, 1961, I caused a lot of damage to myself. I crushed both feet, both ankles, broke both legs in 3 places. I lost all my teeth. I knocked out. I broke both sides of my jaw. I crushed my neck, and that's why I had this tracheotomy scar here. I was in a coma for about 36 hours, and I remember being in that ambulance and floating above my body and looking at myself and saying, I'm hurt too badly. There's no way I'm going to survive this ambulance ride. I'm just hurt too bad. And then, I don't remember anything after that. Anyway, finally get discharged from the hospital, and it was very painful. If they gave me any pain pills, I don't remember because I was in pain constantly. And they let me out about 6 weeks later. I went home. We had a nice house there in a little town they called One. And my dad built a California-style ranch house. And I had a room to myself, and I was recovering, and all I can remember is pain 24 hours a day, no pain pills. And one of his engineers came through to visit, was working on the precursor of the Lear jet, and he had been a Marine on one of the islands, like Maduro or one of those islands, and he knew a little bit about medicine. And when he came in my room and got the odor, he went to my dad and said, John's got gangrene. If you don't get him to an American hospital in the next few days, he's going to lose that leg, if not his life. So they put me on a TWA Constellation, flew to New York, changed planes, flew to Denver. And at Denver, I was met with by Dr. Randy Lovelace. Now, Dr. Randy Lovelace in 1947 was a surgeon. He was from Albuquerque. His father had built and formed the Lovelace Clinic in 1902. And right after the Roswell accident, they sent Randy back to Albuquerque to expand the Lovelace Clinic to where they had where they'd be able to do autopsies of the aliens in complete secrecy. Now, at that time, 1947, 1948, is when they started building the Monsanto weapons storage area that was right there on Kirtland Air Force Base and right near the Lovelace Clinic. And they were all connected. They had all these underground passageways. When I went there in 1961, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know anything about aliens. I didn't know anything about flying saucers. And it's too bad I didn't, because it would have been interesting. Anyway, Dr. Randy Lovelace was the head of that operation, and he's the one that did all the tests for the Mercury and Gemini astronauts. He was a very famous guy. And in 1967, he took his wife up skiing at Aspen. And incidentally, I forgot to tell you, when he picked me up in Denver, he had a Twin Beach, and he had a pilot who was dumber than a box of rocks. I mean, this guy was really stupid. And it was at night, and Randy said, you want to fly in the co-pilot seat? I said, yeah, sure. So I went up in the co-pilot seat with this guy who was flying this Twin Beach. And we taxi out from Denver and we get ready for takeoff, and he's lined up on a taxiway. And he calls for takeoff, and the tower says, do you know you're lined up on the taxiway? Oh, okay, I'll move. Anyway, we get down to Albuquerque, and I go through, a couple, 3 weeks of, they cured me instantly of gangrene. And I left there, went to LA, and that's another story. But anyway, Randy in 1967 had gone skiing in Aspen with his wife. And when they were done skiing at the end of the weekend, he had to get back to Albuquerque. And there was a storm coming through, and he told his pilot he had to get back. Could he fly him back? And of course, the pilot, being dumber than a box of rocks, said yeah. And he tried to sneak through Independence Pass and crashed. And what's interesting is the next day when the rescue team got there, and I mean, Independence Pass, it took a real hike to get up there, and the weather was so bad, they couldn't take a helicopter. They got up to the airplane, and there was evidence that 3 people had searched it completely, walked around the airplane, gone through all of, Randy was dead, so was his wife, so was the pilot. They had searched the airplane, searched his briefcase, taken all his papers. There was no indication of how they got there, but they did take all his stuff. So he was so involved in the UFO thing and the ET thing and the alien autopsies that they had to be sure that nothing leaked out to the public. So to this day, I don't know how they got there, but that is a mystery. But the Lovelace Clinic has always been involved in secret stuff, and it's connected with the Monsanto Weapons Storage Area, Kirtland Air Force Base, and of course Los Alamos. So,
well, John, what about the so-called alien autopsy? The so-called alien autopsy. I also want you to talk about Stanton Friedman, the late Stanton Friedman, if you want to.
That son of a bitch, They asked me...
John, he's dead. You're meant to be saying nice, kind things when people die like that. He died at an airport, for Christ's sake. He's only dead a couple of days. Jesus.
It couldn't have happened soon enough, Stan Friedman. They asked me... several people have asked me if I do I say a few kind words about him. I said, not only no, but hell no. I mean, he spent the last 30 years bad-mouthing Bob Lazar, never took the time to call Bob, never took the time to write him, never time to whenever he time that Friedman was in Las Vegas, do you think he tried to meet Bob? No, he didn't. It was his job, and in case nobody knows, Stan Friedman was a paid government agent. His job was
shocked. What do you mean? That never happens in this business, John. What are you talking about? What are you on?
You're too much, Mouth. Anyway, his job was to discredit Bob Lazar. And
a lot more.
I don't have any kind things to say about Stan Friedman, and that's all there is to say about that.
Okay, you mentioned the alien autopsy. The infamous fake film of the alien autopsy. How much of it was modeled on real film, or what?
The whole thing.
And was it done at the where was it done?
I didn't see one part of that film that looked real or was real.
I mean, I've spoken to the guy who faked it. He went to great lengths to put certain traps in that, so people would say, "Oh, that couldn't be right," and then he found that, well, actually, that thing was right, like the curly telephone thing, that sort of thing. So then people would find, that wasn't right, and then they'd find it was right. Therefore, it was real. He thought it out pretty well, Spiros.
You're something else, Miles. I love talking to you.
But I mean, were there actual aliens done in the Lovelace place?
Oh, yeah.
Is that? I mean, wow. Tell me more.
Absolutely. I mean, there was underground parts of the Lovelace Clinic that connected to the Monsanto Weapons Storage Area. And when we say Monsanto Weapons Storage Area, you think, oh, they must have stored ammo there. Well, there was a lot more than that. There was UFO parts. There was hospital facilities where they could do the autopsies, all that stuff there. And there was very few instances. I think maybe 2 or 3. One from the Lovelace Clinic, one from a parking area, and another maybe from Kirtland. But each one had a door that you went in, and there was a little cubicle, and I don't know how to compare it. It's a little room, maybe 6 by 6, and you'd go in this, open this door, and go in, and the door would close, and there was no door handle, so you couldn't get out. And then there was a little key code thing there. Like, this was in the 50s, and they did have key codes then. We didn't get them until the 60s. But you would punch in like 4 numbers, and the next door would open if you got those 4 numbers right. Now, if you didn't get the 4 numbers right and the red light came on, you got one more chance. And if you got it wrong then, that little cubicle would fill with deadly gas and you'd be dead in 15 seconds. And I actually met a guy who told me exactly what that gas was, and I don't remember what it was. But that's how the security of that thing worked. You didn't get a second chance. You didn't say, oh, wait. Oh. So,
so if you were, so how many aliens? Any information on that? How many are you talking? 1, 2, 3, 5? Were they greys, reptilians, mantids, tall whites? What about the tall whites, John?
Okay, the tall whites is a different story. That's what's his name? What's the guy's name that wrote that book?
Oh God, Charles Hall.
Charles Hall.
I think so.
I loved that book. I loved all 3 of his books. The only argument I have with him is when he said that he vectored the 707. I think he vectored a F-105 and a 707 or something to land there at, what do they call that place? I'm losing my mind.
S4?
The base, no. The base that's along Highway 95 up to Reno. I'll think of it in a second. Anyway, that's the base that he worked at, and he tells this story about the weather being bad, and he was the only one that could work the radar, and he vectored these airplanes in, and it's so erroneous. I mean, the whole story is so full of bullshit. It's almost hard to believe the rest of the story said, but I do believe it. I just believe he got carried away vectoring these planes in, and he's talking about, and then I had told him to bring it down 10 more feet, and then another 5 feet. I mean, total bullshit. But that's the only thing that I found wrong.
Now, why do you think that the tall white story is right? And what about the tall whites who were all wiped out at Paradise in the California fires?
Okay, let me talk about the tall whites first at this place. Creech Air Force Base, that's what they call it now. And then the original name was Indian Springs Air Force Base, and that's where Hall was stationed. Now, why do I believe the tall white story? Well, number one, the way that he tells it and the descriptions of where they were based match. He said he was at the north end of Dogbone Lake, and they walked several miles up that canyon towards the northwest, which leads right into Groom Lake, and that matches. And then you remember the story of Bill Hamilton calling me a few years ago. I'm thinking, no more than 10 years ago. He was on his way up to take a look at Groom Lake. He used to go up there every couple of months, see what was going on, see if there's anything there. And he said he was going to go to the black mailbox, which was black in those days, and then he was going to stay overnight at Rachel. So he calls me, and this was a Sunday. So he goes up there Sunday night, and then stays at Rachel on Sunday night. Then Monday night, he spends out there, and then Tuesday he calls me, and he said, "You going to be there?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, I'm going to come by there. Something weird happened, but I don't know exactly what." And I said, "Oh, yeah, it'd be interesting." So he and his wife drive here, and that would be, Tuesday night. And in those days, I had a couch there in front of the fireplace, and I said, "Do you want me to do a regression?" And he said, "Yeah, that'd be interesting." Well, what's interesting is Bill and I, regressed other people. I was trained in regressive hypnosis, and we had never thought about regressing each other. But, he said, something strange happened. I said, well, let me take a stab at it. And, I didn't set up a recorder because I didn't think I was going to get anything. But his wife took notes about what happened. So I did the regression and got him in. And he tells this story that he and his wife were sitting in the truck. They're facing towards the southeast where the tall grays are, and they're right by the black mailbox. And he sees two like car lights, or like the headlights on a car, coming towards him, and they come faster and faster and faster until. Well, wait. Before I tell you that story, I said, "Okay, what strange happened there?" He says, "Well, we were." We were at the black mailbox, and we saw these car headlights coming towards us. And when they went over us, he said, I turned around, and they're not there, but there's a 18-wheeler going up that little hill there, and I could see the lights on the back of the truck." and I said, "You didn't remember anything like that?" "No, that's what I remember." So I take him into regressive hypnosis, and I take him about, now you see the headlights, now what happens? He says, it's a saucer, and it parks 50 feet directly over the truck. And he said, I am standing on the side. I had the door open of the truck, and I got, kind of 1 foot on the floorboard and 1 foot outside, just hanging there. And it pulls me up. Something pulls me up inside the saucer, and a force, not a person, a force. And he said, and I'm laying down on this real comfortable lounge couch, and there's a tall white there, and he introduces himself as Quaylar. And he said, I'm Quaylar. What did you want? And Bill said, what did I want? He said, yeah, you called us. We didn't call you. And he said, we heard you, saying, you wish somebody would come out there. And so here we are. What can I do for you? So Bill doesn't know what to say. And the Quaylar starts telling him, about, where they're from and what they're doing here. And they use this as a stop every once in a while. And they have a base there between Dogbone Lake and Groom Lake, and there's several families there, and da. So anyway, they talk for about a half an hour, and then Quaylar says, "I have to leave now, so you're going to have to get down in your truck." And so Bill gets up and he walks over to the door, and he's looking out, and it's 50 feet down there, And he's going to get creamed if he steps off there. And Quaylar says, relax, just step off. You'll be okay. So Bill steps off, and it just floats right down to the truck. And he ends up right where he remembers being, with 1 foot in the truck and 1 foot on the ground, just hanging there, and turns around, and then that 18-wheeler goes up there. That was a false memory. And so then I did this regression. His wife took the notes and everything. It was pretty interesting. But when you say, what's your evidence for the tall whites, that would be my evidence that Quaylar, one of the tall whites, had picked up Bill. And
well, I've heard that there was good reason why the tall whites who were living at Paradise were taken out. Do you have any idea why they would be taken out?
Absolutely not. They're, the way that Hall tells it, they were a peaceful group. They were scared of humans. I don't know. Uh, I doubt whether they were taken out because I'm sure they have a protective forces, but I don't know. And you're the only one that told me the story about. Now, are we talking about Paradise, California?
Yeah, we're talking about Paradise, California, and the some kind of directed energy weapon was used in that area, but not necessarily everywhere.
Okay, I don't know too much about that, or anything. I don't know anything about that.
Well, apart from the kind words you have for Stanton Friedman, and it's great to see you. Finally, about these lunar bases and how we got up there, anniversary of Apollo. I mean, what's your last word on that before we say goodnight?
Which Apollo?
Well,
sure.
Yeah.
So,
I think you've said it.
Okay, now, you remember that picture right there?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Now, this is the one that I put on my post, and this is when they were digging the subway.
Okay.
And you see the fake
Could
casino.
you identify that first picture so people know what it is? The first picture you held up. That's the casino?
That's today's paper in the Review-Journal.
Okay.
The reason I'm showing you that is it says Resorts World has a new president, but they showed the current construction of the fake casino. Now, the fake casino was built by Boyd Gaming.
And we talked about that in our last interview when I was with you in Las Vegas, okay? Just for people's reference.
Okay. So then here's the picture of the fake casino as it stands now. And I think I told you that when they bought the casino, it was a 1.5 year delay getting started. And I told you I didn't know for sure, but I thought that Boyd Gaming might not have told Resorts World that it was a fake casino to hide the subway construction. And when Resorts World started getting ready to continue the construction, they found out that it had not been built to code, and it took a year to get it all into code so they could go ahead and finish it.
But that subway, remind people what that subway is. It's to a new base way up
on Paiute, and it's more secret than Groom Lake, and you will never hear anything about it. I watched it being built, and it's huge. And those subways take 2,500 people up in the morning. Well, more now. That was 20 years ago. And not only that, but they had to build a new terminal. You know, I told you they had the one at the Bellagio, and they had one at Luxor. Now they've got one at Aria because there's so many people. They needed several other places to park all those cars. So they built the new terminal at the underground secret terminal at Aria. So.
Yeah, but John, you gave me a map. You showed me a map with a big circle on it. And if it's really secret, surely that secret map with the secret circle on it shouldn't show something secret at all because it's a secret.
No, that's how you keep things secret, is you don't put restricted area. And that's the mistake that the secret government made when they built the secret runway up at Ferber Flats, which is just 44 miles south of Wendover, Utah. In 1990, there were so many stories. I was coming up with so many stories that they had to put an end to it. And they increased their security drastically. And what they did is they started giving lie detector tests to everybody that not only worked at the test site, but that worked at Lawrence Livermore and Los Alamos Labs. And the first question in this lie detector test was, do you know John Lear, and what is your relationship with John Lear? So that.
Yeah, but John, you don't tell anybody anything. You just tell a couple of people on a private Skype or phone call.
Yeah, well, somehow they must have had an inside track.
You mean somebody else could be watching this now?
Yeah, 30 years ago, I had that little piece of paper that California put in all cable TV boxes, and it said it's illegal to use a cable TV to look into a person's home, because people think that, oh, it's a TV. Well, they can't use it as a camera. Yes, they can. It works exactly like earphones. You can use earphones as a microphone, and they can use cable TV to look into your house. And California forbid that, of course, like they're going to pay attention to it.
Well, okay. Well, one last thing. Anything else to say to your fans, and any other individuals that you might want to mention?
No, I can't say it's been a pleasure, Miles, because, you know, like a trying interview. You're always trying to trip me up. You've always got that trap that is put out there, just waiting for me to say something.
Me? Let's do a thing like that.
It's great talking to you.
Okay, happy days.